to have you all join us. Let's click that. So welcome along to this session around talking about diversity, equity and inclusion, and specifically why this is not only an HR problem. So I shall come into some of the challenges that, as an ex-HR, in-house HR person myself, I know that we come up against, and how we can really start the conversation to really bring it into the realms of it's a business conversation that we need to be having. So I've got some slides to take us through just to kind of build the picture. So I will start sharing now and then I will introduce myself. Okie dokie. Can you give us a thumbs up just to let me know that you can see that? Okay, super, thank you. Okay, just in terms of the way my presentations will work, I will take you through some slides. We're going to cover some basics around diversity, equity and inclusion. Some of you, if you've heard me speak before, you might be familiar with this now, but I do think it's always good to start at the beginning for everybody so we all know what we're talking about when we refer to these terms. I'm just going to move that window so I can see your faces. There we go. And yeah, so in terms of questions, I'm happy to take questions as we go through. That's not a problem. If I'm speaking about something and you think, I'm not sure what that means. What does cisgender mean? Or if I use a term that you're not sure about, please feel free to come off mute and interrupt me. I'm perfectly okay with that. Feel free to drop it into the chat. That's fine too. I've got the chat open, and I think, Zoe, if you can keep an eye on it for me as well, that would be great. So yes, all interruptions, all questions are welcome. This is a safe space as well in terms of anything you want to ask. I'm absolutely open to having any conversations that you need if it's going to help you on your journey. So yeah, there's no topic that is off limits. So what we're going to talk about today. So as I said, this session is specifically around why the conversations around diversity, equity and inclusion should not be confined solely to the HR space. They're not a single person's job description remit. Diversity, equity and inclusion is a business concern. It's a business issue and challenge, and we should all be responsible in our part to play, particularly senior leaders. So what we're going to talk about today is, you know, the people profession. If you are in any of the people functions, HR, recruitment, reward, any of those spaces, it's really tough right now, and it has been for a number of years, and a lot of us are really feeling it. So we're just going to take a minute to talk about that. And like I said, I'll go through some basics around inclusion and equity, and specifically around intersecting identities. Then we're going to talk about why DEI is personal, because it's not just a thing we do at work. It's something that, you know, we want to be living and breathing. Then we're going to get into the meat about, okay, so if it's not an HR issue, what in HR can we do? What do we need our leaders to be doing? And how might we move forwards? But before all of that, who is this person that stood here talking to you? So for those of you that haven't met me yet, my name is Katie Allen. I am a specialist in diversity, equity and inclusion, which is, I guess, good for you because that's why I'm here. I'm also an executive coach and mentor, and I run my organisation. You can tell I'm not the most creative because it's Katie Allen Consulting. I can always remember my name, so I figured that was a good way to go. So what that means is that from an EDI perspective, I work with organisations, specifically with senior leaders and HR teams, in how can we bring DEI to life in your organisation? What does a culture of inclusion look like for you specifically? Because spoiler alert, and we'll put it out there straight away, there is no checklist. There's nothing you can download from the internet that you can work your way through and say, tick, we've done inclusion. That's not how it works. It's got to be specific for your organisation, for your people and what you need. So I work with teams and organisations to kind of unpack all of that and what works for you. And I also work on a one-to-one and group basis, as I say, as a coach and mentor with either senior leaders or HR teams around how can they specifically contribute to that, or what might they need in terms of their own personal learning journey. My background, I've got over 15 years in HR in-house positions and senior commercial leadership positions at a European level. And I put on there as well, I've got 40 years as a human person, because honestly, when we start talking about diversity and inclusion, it really is all about people. And that's one of the most important things, is our own lived experiences that we bring to the conversation. So that's me. So HR, when I was thinking about, you know, what does it mean to work in an HR or people function at the minute? What really kind of came through for me is actually, yeah, how busy are we all right now? And especially for the last 2 years, you know, trying to manage a global pandemic, trying to manage Black Lives Matter and the responding to movements and that, and the concepts that are coming out around EDI and all of this new information that's coming to light. And how do we traverse this? How do we manage that along with all of the other things that we're trying to achieve on a day-to-day basis? It feels like everything that comes up in society right now, there seems to be a business connection of, oh, that's about people, we'll give it to the people team. This has got to be an HR issue, let's give it to Susan in HR, she can fix this for us. And it feels like on the outside, we're in this position where we have to say like, sure, okay, no problem, global pandemic, I'm on it, no worries. When actually on the inside, every single one of us is a bit like, I don't know how to manage this. I've never experienced a global pandemic before, have you? And who do we turn to and where do we go? And this for me kind of summed up like, is how we've probably all been feeling for the last few years. And I kind of want to begin by saying like, it's okay. You're not on your own in feeling that. Nobody's an expert in how to manage a global pandemic. Nobody's an expert in what the future of remote working might look like, or the war on talent, or how to really create an inclusive culture in your organization. There are so many ways of managing all of these things, and it's got to be about what's right for your organization. So don't beat yourself up. The whole purpose of this conversation is really to help give you the tools to find out what might you want to be, and help you match that kind of feeling on the outside and the inside a little bit. You don't need to be on your own, and you don't need to worry about this. I'm here, I've got you. So whilst I'm not here to actually help you with all the remote working stuff, because that's not my area of expertise, I am going to talk about inclusion. So what is a culture of inclusion? And you will notice I've put here specifically an intentional culture of inclusion, because for me it's where the intent is that matters. So when we think about inclusion specifically, it really is all about what work is organized like within our organization. So it's the culture and the mix of people who come to work in our organizations, and how we make spaces where they can feel comfortable and confident to be themselves and work in an authentic way that works for them and helps them deliver and meet the business needs. So inclusion specifically as well, I'm sure we can all think of a time where we've maybe been in a situation, whether at work or not, where we perhaps have not felt included, or where we have felt explicitly excluded. And as a woman who spent 10 years working in the petrochemical industry, I can absolutely tell you that I've got countless examples of being in spaces that were not meant for me, that were not designed for me, of having to walk a mile off site to go back to the admin block to go and use the toilet because there weren't any facilities available for me on an oil refinery at that time, of having to want to get changed, but I can't use the mess facilities because they're created for the groups of men who are working on site, because women weren't in those roles. So again, having to crouch down behind someone's desk just to change my coveralls. So I have countless examples, and it gets worse as you become more senior in positions, because I'm still having to do that. And yet I'm supposed to be commanding these team of people that are going out to work on site. So I'm very used to working in situations where I have not felt included. And I'm sure we all have examples at one time or another in our life where perhaps we've gone for a job interview and the people interviewing us don't look like us. We can't make that connection. We're just not used to those spaces. So it's really about inclusion being the opposite of that. How do we make spaces where people can come to work as themselves and feel comfortable and confident being authentically themselves? And I say intentional because for me, this is the action piece that goes with that. Because we have to recognize that in creating these cultures where we can authentically be ourselves, it takes purpose, it takes action, and it takes attention. So we really have to intentionally apply our mindset and our activity to creating that culture. It's not something that just kind of happens. It takes effort, and it takes the involvement of all people to drive that. And I've also put here about it being different from assimilation. So for me, assimilation is where we have an organization and we say, this is how we work in our organization. And we go through processes of recruitment where we want to find the best candidate who is going to bring something new and innovative to our organization. And then we sheep dip them through an induction process to tell them, this is how we work in our organization. So now you have to become like us. And you take all of that stuff that you said was special about them and what they were going to bring to your organization, and you slowly minimize it and demonstrate to them that actually you can't bring that here. You know, the things that make you different and special isn't what makes it possible for you to thrive and succeed in our organization. So assimilation is where you take a person and you ask them, or you shape them to change in a way that works in the environment. Whereas inclusion is really looking at who is in our environment and how can we shape that environment to really work for the people that we want to bring in and that we want to have thriving in our organization. So it's working the other way around. And by that, I also say, beware of the term culture fit, because I know especially in HR, I know it's a term that we're really comfortable using. We hire for culture fit. We look to promote people because they're good for our culture. What do we mean by that? You know, what does culture fit mean to you? Is it a type of person you're looking for, a type of behavior or characteristic that you're looking for? What is it we mean when we say culture fit? Because sometimes that can take us back into assimilation again. What is it we're looking for to make sure that everybody behaves in the same way in our organization? So from my perspective, instead of using the term culture fit, what I like to think about is culture add. What is it that this person's going to bring to our organization? How are they going to add to the culture that we've got here to make it even better, to make it even more innovative, to make it even more welcoming, so that everybody gets to come to work and feel included and be their authentic self? And that's where that intention comes from. How are we searching and making sure that we're adding to our culture? Any questions on any of that? Okay. Now, at this point, so I want to talk about intersecting identities. And what that means, and intersectionality is a term that I'll come on to show you a video about in a moment. But when we talk about our identity, we really have to recognize that each of us are not any one thing. Okay, so I am a white, cisgender, middle class, 40-year-old woman. And all of these aspects are parts of my identity that make up me. Oh, and actually I did say, didn't I, if you don't understand the term. So for anyone who's not familiar with the term cisgender, what that means is that I identify with the gender that I was assigned at birth. So it's the opposite of transgender. So someone who does not identify with the gender they were assigned at birth. So I would class myself as a cisgender woman. And all of these aspects of my identity, they all come together and make me whole. And we have to think about that when we're thinking about the people in our organization. We're not any one thing. And the way in which we bring our authentic self to work depends on how all of those elements of our identity come together. So this is where the concept of intersectionality or intersecting identities comes together. And usually at this point, I'll then go on and give a big explanation about, you know, really how do we get under the skin of what that means about the oppressions that we face. But with many, many thanks to Danielle Bridge of ABC, oh gosh, what's the company? ABC Life Support. She did a session on intersectionality a while ago and she shared a fantastic video. So I want to share that video for you as well, because it sums up in a couple of minutes something that I haven't managed to do quite so succinctly yet. So I'm just going to play this for you. Can you hear it?
What is intersectionality? Intersectionality is a way of understanding social relations by examining intersecting forms of discrimination. This means acknowledging that social systems are complicated and that many forms of oppression, like racism, sexism, and ageism, might be present and active at the same time in a person's life. Everyday approaches to building equality tend to focus on one type of discrimination, for instance, sexism, and then work to address only that specific concern. But while the career of a young, white, and able-bodied woman might improve with gender equality protections, an older, Black, disabled lesbian may continue to be hampered by racism, ageism, ableism, and homophobia in the workplace. Intersectionality is about understanding and addressing all potential roadblocks to an individual or group's well-being. But it's not as simple as just adding up oppressions and addressing each one individually. Racism, sexism, and ableism exist on their own, but when combined, they compound and transform the experience of oppression. Intersectionality acknowledges that unique oppressions exist, but is also dedicated to understanding how they change in combination. The roots of intersectionality lie within the Black feminist movement, with legal scholar Kimberly Crenshaw originating the term. Crenshaw felt that anti-racist and feminist movements were both overlooking the unique challenges faced by Black women. She stated that legislation about race is framed to protect Black men, and legislation about sexism is understood to protect white women. So simply combining racism and sexism together does not therefore protect Black women. Intersectional theory is now applied across a range of social divisions and also to understandings of domination, such as those associated with whiteness, masculinity, and heterosexuality. Intersectionality is not only about multiple identities, and it's not a simple answer to solving problems around equality and diversity. It is, however, an essential framework as we truly engage with issues around privilege and power and work to bring them into the open. Intersectionality means listening to others, examining our own privileges, and asking questions about who may be excluded or adversely affected by our work. As importantly, it means taking measurable action to invite, include, and center the voices and work of marginalized individuals.
Okay. So was anyone familiar with the term intersectionality prior to watching that video, or is that new for everybody? Yeah. Okay. And what are the thoughts that you're having kind of around that? Is there anything standing out for anybody? Like, oh, I hadn't really thought about that. No. Because it's important to, you know, as we said there, it's important to understand that when we're pulling together any policies or processes or anything that is going to impact the people within our organization, we really have to think about all the different lenses that we need to be looking through and how they come together and how they intersect in terms of what the experience might be for someone. So, you know, if we're looking to create a program within our organization that focuses on how do we advance women within the workplace, we have to make sure we're thinking about all women, and that would include transgender women, Black women, disabled women. So it's not just focusing on, you know, the image we might have in our minds of, well, women are women, so one thing's going to work for everybody. It doesn't work that way. Does that make sense to everybody? Yeah. Any questions on that? So this then brings on to equity, and this is why I call myself a diversity, equity and inclusion specialist rather than equality. And you may well have seen this graphic before, because I think practically everybody that's ever done any work on equity will have shown it. But for those of you that have not seen it, I think this is a really great way of understanding what the difference between equality and equity is. So equality is simply about treating everybody in the same way. So everybody gets the same access to resources, the same quality support, they get treated in the same way, because that is what, in terms of society, we deem is fair. We give everybody the same thing, and therefore we have treated everybody equally. But when we think about equity, it's really about kind of taking a step back from that and thinking, what does an individual need in order to get to the same place as everybody else? And it's about recognizing that we don't all step off from the same starting point. So if we apply this to a kind of a real life situation, if we think about our annual pay reviews, equally, so treating everybody equally and achieving equality would be giving everybody a 3% pay rise, okay? Because that is treating everybody the same, and that is fair. Except if we then look at our gender pay gap information, which many of you might be reporting on, if we know that we have got an area that we need to pay attention to, or a specific role that is impacted by a gender pay gap, or a specific person, then you will want to take steps to address that. So simply giving everybody a 3% pay rise, it might be equal, but it's not going to be equitable in terms of addressing a known issue or a known challenge that you might be experiencing within your organisation. So equity is really looking at what do we need in the specific circumstances in our organisation that gives everybody the access that they need to their resources or to opportunity. Yeah. Had we all seen this image before? Because I think this one's a little bit more popular. Yeah. Okay. And are there any questions on the difference between equity and equality? No. Okay. So from my perspective, I find it's very important to call out that difference, and like I said, that's why I term myself as an equity specialist, because it really is about understanding what is required in each organisation and for each person in terms of getting to where they need to be. Okay. So now moving on to kind of the diversity aspect, but something that I really want to call out here is, okay, we recognise that diversity is the makeup of our team. It is the ways in which that we bring all of our differences together in the makeup of a team. And actually, something that I will just call out at this moment is when we talk about diversity, we are talking about groups. We're talking about groups of people. A single person on their own cannot be diverse. They may have, a diverse educational background or a diverse experiences, but a single person on their own is not diverse. They are a person. So it's only once we are part of a group that all of the things that we bring to the table make the group diverse. So when we're having conversations about, and I hear this a lot in the recruitment world as well, around talent, and we say we're looking for diverse talent, for me, that's one of the red flags that I look out for, because actually it's almost like a coded way that we're saying that we're looking for someone who is not white, basically. So really be careful about the way in which we use language here. So when we're talking about diversity, we're talking about the makeup of a team. And while the studies have shown, so for example, the McKinsey studies, I think they've been really widely publicised out there, that diverse teams will outperform homogenous teams. And by homogenous, I mean teams that are made up of people who are all the same. If we have a gender diverse team, it will outperform a homogenous team by about 25%. And if we have an ethnically diverse team, that increases to about 36%. But the caveat on that is only if those teams are inclusive. So you can have the most wildly diverse team that you can find, but if you do not actively and intentionally create inclusion within those teams, they will not be able to perform, and the homogenous teams will, because they naturally have more collective shared commonality. So diversity is fantastic, but only when it is implemented or when it is apparent within an inclusive team structure. And I also want to draw kind of attention here as well to the fact that the visible diversity here is not the goal. Okay, so it's not about having beautiful pictures of all of your people on the website looking different, whilst that is one way of measuring your diversity. It's really about understanding what are the collective differences that we bring. And if we think about intersectionality, not all of our differences are visible. In fact, very few of our differences are visible, and we'll come on to look at that in a minute. So it's really about our cognitive diversity and how that can enhance our teams. What is it that we really bring to the party? Because it's about all of our lived experiences, not just the way we look. It's about everything we are and what we bring. So we need inclusive cultures if we're going to foster diversity. We need psychological safety as well, because we need to be able to know that when we do show up as our authentic self, we're going to be welcome. We don't want to be that person who, we get invited to the fancy dress party and we think brilliant, and we get our outfit on and we're all ready and we show up and we're the only person in fancy dress because we trusted that that's what was going to be asked of us. And when we got there and we showed up in the way that we wanted, we feel really exposed and vulnerable. Okay, so it's really about creating psychological safety and physical safety and emotional safety, where people really can show up with authenticity so that they bring all of their lived experience and all of their cognitive diversity to the party. And that is what is going to give you the high performance. And when I say, if we really unpack about, okay, why visible diversity is not the goal, I was trying to think about actually what are all of the ways in which that we can understand what is different about each of us just by looking at us. And most things we cannot tell. So absolutely, we can see somebody's skin color. We can see somebody's body shape, possibly. We can possibly assess somewhat their level of physical ability, and we can potentially guess someone's approximate age. But that's about it. That's about as close as we're going to get, because pretty much everything about us does not sit on the surface. You know, we cannot make assumptions about gender identity, and especially not anymore, because, you know, we acknowledge it's not a binary situation. You know, people may present in a way that you assume to be male or female, but that may not be who they are, how they want to be, okay, or how they are. So, you know, we need to make sure we're not making assumptions about people's gender, about their religion, about their skills, about their talents, about their sexual identity. All of these are things that hide underneath our visible identity. Okay, so that's a lot of stuff. Are there any thoughts or anything that anybody wants to kind of add, or kind of moments that you've had in looking at this? Okay. And the reason that I've put power and privilege and biases in big old letters underneath there is because the way in which that we kind of understand and view other people is really underpinned from where we are in our own starting point. You know, because the one thing that we can ever know with absolute certainty when it comes to being a human person is what it's like to be us, and everything else is learning. Okay, so when we arrive in a situation or in a space or in a group, we arrive influenced by our own position of power and privilege, so where we are. So like I said, I'm a white cisgender woman. I have immense power and privilege. I have to acknowledge that, in comparison, you know, to say a Black transgender man with a disability. So, you know, I have to acknowledge that when I arrive in a situation, I have some immense power and privilege from my social location. And we are all different depending on the aspects of our identity. And of course, we all have biases as well, and they have been shaped and reinforced through our entire lives. So it's about acknowledging that when we arrive in scenarios or in situations, we are influenced by all of these things as well. So this is why our visible diversity is not the goal. It's about really getting to understand who are the people that we work with, and how are we creating spaces where everybody gets to arrive, and acknowledging that we all arrive with our own influences. Okay. Any questions on any of that? Okay. So when I say that it is not an HR challenge, what I mean is it really is a journey. It's a journey for everybody. And for our organisations, we really need to be able to bring the conversation up to a leadership level. So it's not just an HR thing to influence. It's not a people issue that we can give to one team and ask them to solve it. Because if we're going to create an intentional culture of inclusion within an organisation, it needs to be led by everybody. So it needs to be, you know, a senior leadership team, board level, preferably, arrangement that is then brought to life through the enactment of everybody within that organisation. But when we think about the work context, most leaders are currently motivated by the organisation's motivations. So in terms of, you know, what is the performance like within our organisation? How innovative are we? How engaged are our people? How are we attracting talent? What's our reputation? What's our turnover? It's very much motivated by what can diversity, equity and inclusion do for us from an organisational motivation perspective. But if we want to bring inclusive cultures to life, we have to do the work that comes before that. And what I mean is about examining what our personal and individual motivations are. What is it that having a diverse, equitable and inclusive culture means to us as an individual? Because we could have a moral motivation in terms of we might belong to one of the either a protected characteristic group, or we might have an aspect of our identity that has been previously excluded or marginalized. So we have a kind of an internal individual motivation to want to create better spaces. You know, and that the moral kind of argument can also extend to, we have family members maybe who are on the neurodivergent spectrum, or there might be people in our lives who have been living with a disability, and we know what that's like for them. We want to see better spaces within the world of work. We see it and we have a moral obligation to want to do something about that. And it can have a personal impact on us as well. So there are many, many ways in which we as individuals can be motivated, but it's about finding what is it that having an inclusive workspace means to us. How are we motivated? And even once I have spoken to a very senior leader who was looking to step up into a CEO position, and their personal motivation was simply around personal development, that they knew that unless they got their head around what diversity, equity and inclusion meant, they weren't going to get the CEO position because it's a big deal currently. So they were motivated for their own personal development. So that's where it came from, and they were being authentic. I mean, obviously, I think there are probably better reasons to be personally motivated, but he was being honest in terms of where he was in that position. And actually doing the learning brought so much to life for him that he really then understood why the journey was important. And it moved it away from kind of this personal development motivation to the moral argument, which was, I now understand why doing the right thing is important and I'm invested in that. And the reason I say all of this is important is, if you think about well-being, it's been a real hot topic for the last few years for very good reason. And it became very popular for us all to say about putting our own oxygen mask on before we help others. So taking care of our own mental health and our own well-being before we start helping other people. And I would say the same is true when it comes to addressing diversity, equity and inclusion. You know, we need to be able to turn the lights on for ourselves. Otherwise, we're just leading people around in the dark. So we need to know what it means to us and what our experiences and understanding is of the situation before, as leaders, we can step up and take people on their journey. So I'm saying absolutely we need to be putting our oxygen masks on, but we also need to be turning our own light bulbs on too. Are there any questions in there around kind of motivation? Okay. So from an HR perspective, as we know in HR, it is always about what is reasonable. So whereas creating this culture of inclusion is not just an HR issue, HR challenge, there are absolutely ways in which we can influence it and things that we can do from an HR perspective or from a people management perspective that is reasonable to expect us to be the leaders in that. So we have got access to all of the data and the employee feedback and the surveys and the connections with people in our organizations. And we're most likely the trusted party when it comes to having the conversations to find out what it is that's going on within our organizations. So we absolutely can gather that evidence, gather the hard, tangible information that we've got within our organizations and bring that to help tell the story about what it feels like to be someone in our organization. We can create, I put ERGs there, that stands for employee resource groups. And what that means is bringing together groups of people who are personally motivated, personally impacted, or want to act as allies to others within the organisation, and bringing groups of people together who really want to help the organisation take action in creating inclusive spaces. They will be the people within your organisation with the lived experience that you want to tap into, and you can absolutely be the heart of bringing those people together. But you will also need sponsorship from senior leaders and executives to be able to get the buy-in on that, and we can talk about that in a minute. But you can absolutely be the support function in terms of bringing those groups and creating those opportunities. You are the people experts in your organisation, so you can challenge as the people experts in your organisation. You have got so much knowledge and insight when it comes to what is going on in the people space. You can bring all of that to the party, and you can use that to challenge with confidence your senior leaders, and you should be doing that. You will be probably more familiar than others within your organisation about how to facilitate sessions and to coach people into having these kind of conversations. So absolutely, this is your domain, about making those connections and helping people bring people to the conversation, bring the people aspects. Because let's face it, there is nothing soft about the soft skills that we need to possess to be successful within HR. There is nothing fluffy about working in HR. It is hard, it is taxing, and you are absolutely the right people to be facilitating and coaching those conversations. That is where your areas of expertise sit in comparison to others potentially. And like I said, you've got day-to-day oversight on what is going on in your organisation from an employee experience perspective. People know you and trust you. You're usually responsible for the induction processes. You are usually responsible for the exit processes and anything that touches on people in between. You've got all of the knowledge. You've got all the data. So you are the ones that is reasonable to be driving and narrating those stories that you want to tell in your organisation. But leaders. And this is where I say all leaders they must be leading by example. They need to be taking ownership of what is going on in your organisation. There is no good saying, well, we've nominated HR to be in charge of this, go and talk to them. Leaders need to be taking ownership of any of the actions that are going on in your organisation. And this might mean that they don't need to be the people doing the day-to-day activity in terms of running workshops and things like that, but they need to be present, they need to be showing up, and they need to be demonstrating the behaviours that you are going to be looking to cultivate within your inclusive culture. They need to be taking ownership of that and leading by example. And the reason, when we were talking about going on the journey and knowing our own motivations, leaders need to become comfortable having these conversations that are uncomfortable. They need to be really clear about what is and is not acceptable in your organisations, and being comfortable to either address that when things happen, or to be, like we say, walking the talk of what it is that we want people to be doing. And this is the tough bit, okay? This is where that personal journey comes into. We've got to do our own learning. We've got to be turning our own lights on if we're going to get comfortable. And one of the tests of this can be, how frequently in your organisation do you have a conversation about racism and how that might show up in your workplace? Because I can assure you, if you are a majority white organisation, it will show up somewhere. So how comfortable with your leadership team are you about having conversations about that? Because 9 times out of 10, when I start to have these conversations, I can feel the energy in the room shift. I can feel the squirming. Is it okay to say black? We don't know. And if your organisation is at that space, that's where you need to start doing your learning from. So get comfortable having these uncomfortable conversations. And then prioritise action. And again, this is where you need leaders, because if you're going to take action to create these intentionally inclusive cultures, you are going to need resources. You are going to need a budget. And you are going to need senior leader sponsorship to get things over the line and to create that accountability. So you're going to need to have support of your leaders to prioritise that action and their ownership. And finally, your leaders need to be prepared to make mistakes, because, like I said, there's no checklist that you can download from the internet to see if you're getting this right. There is no one-size-fits-all approach to D&I. So it's going to be what works for your organisation and your people in the context of the work that you do. That means experimentation. That means being unafraid to take risks, to try things, to invite input from your organisation, and just finding out what works. And that does then mean making some mistakes and learning from that and changing. Okay. And I really want to be quite clear on here. A lot of this is about action. It's about how, as leaders, are they showing up with action and intention and leading their commitment to D&I in your organisation when no one is looking, risking something in solidarity of achieving a culture of inclusion. It's not just about, we've had Pride Month. It's not just about turning your social media square on LinkedIn a nice rainbow colour. That's not actively supporting the LGBTQIA+ community. That's performative. It's about what are you doing to get under the skin of how it feels like to be a member of the LGBTQIA+ community in your organisation. So there's a difference there between actionable leadership and performative leadership. Are there any questions on any of that? Because I think that was quite a lot. Okay. So where do you go with this? So if this is going to be the start of the journey, what you need to do is get yourself a map. So the questions that you will want to be discussing with your leaders is, where is your organisation currently? Because the best place for you to start is at the beginning. And that will mean taking a step back and taking a look at what is going on in our organisation. How is all of our personal learning? If we're thinking about turning those light bulbs on, as a leadership team, where are we? As an HR team, where are we? You know, me as an individual, where am I? Where are my gaps in my knowledge? What do I need to know about? And how are we talking about this to our people? Where are their gaps in their knowledge? What do our people need? And who can help us? You know, where are you now? How comfortable are you talking about all of the ists and isms that exist? You know, what are the stories that your data is telling you? You know, do you have pay gap issues that you need to be looking into? When you think about your retention pipeline, have you got any particular data story that is being told there in terms of why people leave or when people leave, at which point in their timeline with your company? When you think about your recruitment processes, you know, do you start off with a really great diverse pool of candidates, and then as soon as it gets to face, it becomes more homogenous? Or, you know, what is your data telling you? So where is your organization right now? Has anyone got any thoughts that they want to kind of ask about that, or any questions about, okay, we think we might know where we are, but we're not sure, or anything that you would like to know off that?
Hi Katie, it's Charlotte here.
Hello.
Hello, sorry, I haven't got my camera on.
That's okay, no worries.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm sitting here listening. I know I'm not saying much, but we've got a forum, a diversity forum at our firm. And one of the things I think we're struggling with generally is, I hear what you're saying here, that, you know, these questions, we're looking at them, we're trying to work with them. But time is a problem.
Yeah.
Because obviously we've all got, and I'm just being very honest here, we've all got day jobs that are very busy. We're all, the forum is made up of people from different areas of the business, all doing different things and different time pressures. And time really is, you know, hard. It's hard to come by, and we have to fit this all in. And it's fine, we're trying our best, but you know, it is hard. I just wondered if there's any, and senior management too, you know, that might not be on the forum because they're too senior. But I just wondered if there was anything around that you have experience with.
Interesting. So yes, I would say that is incredibly common in terms of organisations want to bring together a group of people to be responsible for this. I guess some of my questions for you are, when you said about senior leadership might be would you say too senior to be?
Yeah, sorry, I thought you might pick up on that. So our forum is made up of some senior managers, but not other senior managers. So it's a mixture.
Okay, so I guess my question is, who has overall accountability for the activity that comes out of that group?
Well, I do as the chair, but we all do as the forum. I guess, but then I guess it's the whole firm has accountability is the message we're trying to get across.
Yeah. In order, because what it sounds like, Charlotte, is that, yeah, I can see that time is the kind of the symptomatic challenge, but actually it's priority.
Yeah.
That sounds like it's the challenge there, in terms of when you think about everything that you're trying to achieve, like you say, you're doing this in addition to your day job.
Yeah.
So where does the priority sit? And I can understand, obviously, you're employed to perform a function, so that's where the priority sits, and you're trying to do this as an extra. But in terms of the accountability piece, what I would always advise clients, if, you know, setting up some kind of employee resource group or action group in this way, is clearly define what it is you expect the group to deliver.
Yeah.
So in terms of who is the senior leader, so who is, you know, and it should ideally be somebody at the most senior levels of your organization who is accountable for what this group achieves. Because if they are accountable, they are going to want to know what's going on and how is it being driven, because they should be, you know, the success of that group sits with them, so to speak. And then that's what I was talking about. Actually, you need resources, so you need time and you need budget. And you need support. So I guess my next thought then as well is, in terms of this additional activity that you're putting into this group, how are you being compensated for that? You know, is it literally just something that everybody's doing a bit above their day job?
It is at the moment, yes.
Yeah. And I would say that makes it tricky, doesn't it, to prioritize the time effectively. If someone's not sitting down and saying, actually, we need to create an environment where you have space to actively contribute to this group, you know, however X many hours a month, and we're going to make sure that happens for you, and we are going to reward you in this way for that. Or actually it's a bit of a bolt-on and we know that D&I is something we should really be addressing, so we're just going to get together a group of passionate people and ask them to do it in addition. So I would say you're probably not going to see the results you might hope in that way, because it's not being prioritized in the way that's going to make it actionable.
Yeah, that all makes sense.
Yeah,
it's not easy, that though, is it?
I mean, no, 100% it is not. And I guess that's why it comes back to understanding, why did you set that group up in the first place? What was the intention? Because if the intention is because we really, you know, we value this and we really want to make meaningful change in our organization, you need more support, you need some resource, you know, you need some budget, you need to have a clear idea of what is it that this group is going to deliver, how will you be measured? You know, how are people selected to be a part of that group? Is it on a voluntary basis, or, you know, are you inviting people to apply to have these positions? You know, there are so many ways that you can go about it. Do you have a job description in terms of performing that role? And it makes it more formal and gives it more credibility, and therefore makes it more of a priority.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Are there any other questions or anything coming off of this? Is anybody else in a similar place to Charlotte? Because my experience tells me that she's not alone in trying to run some kind of action groups in this way. So is anybody else in a similar place who could just maybe show some solidarity to Charlotte so she knows she's not on her own?
Just me, Katie.
No, just you. Okay, well, congratulations. Well done for trying. and this is it. Everybody has to start somewhere, right? And it is about what is it that we can do in our organization. But you will only ever be as successful as the priority and as the seriousness that is placed upon whatever the initiative is that you're trying to enact, and also understanding why. What's your why? What's the motivation for wanting to do the action that you're taking? What does it give your organization? Because you want to be crystal clear on that. Otherwise, how do you measure whether or not it's successful? Okay. So ways in which I can help you. So first and foremost, I'm always here for any questions, advice, guidance. If if you're facing an issue like Charlotte or a different issue, then I'm 100% always happy to have a conversation with anybody, because this is my passion as well as my job. And I am on a mission to want to create as many intentionally inclusive workplaces as possible, because I genuinely believe that this is what is required in society. So I'm always available for any conversations that you might need. I've got a myriad of free resources that are available. So I have a weekly newsletter that comes out on a Thursday morning called Allyship in Action. You can sign up to that on my website. I've got free downloadable resources. It's actually only a section that went live this week, but I'm going to keep adding to that. So there is a free download in there on how to create an employee resource group. So it might be something you want to go and have a look at. It's a little 2-page PDF. So feel free to go and take that. I do regular blogs, LinkedIn posts. I'm happy to connect with anybody that would like, so please do reach out. I'm always here and willing. Specifically, I also run allyship courses. So my Allyship for HR course is starting in September. This is a 5-session course where we will go through looking inwards on your personal journey and who are we in terms of our own identity and how does that play out. Looking outwards in terms of the way that we interact with people. I have a guest speaker that comes along and comes and shares their lived experience. And for this session, it's a lady called Katie Neves. She is a trans ambassador and runs the organisation Cool to Be Trans, and she will come and speak about what it's like to be a trans person in the workplace. And then we also talk about how do we turn all of our learning into action. And because it's a specific for HR and people practitioners, there's also a lot of information there about what do we do about our data and our policies, and how do we bring all of this to life on that practical level. And like I say, I also offer one-to-one coaching and mentoring. I do some in-house work as well with senior leaders. And coming in September, I'm also going to be offering psychological safety assessments, which can help organisations really get into understanding how psychologically safe is it for the people within your organisation as well. So there are many ways in which I'm here and available to help you. But yeah, if anything is of interest to you, or if you just want to talk about your specific circumstances in your organisation, please connect with me on LinkedIn, drop me an email, give me a call. I'm totally happy to have any conversations that need. And if you want to get in touch with me, this is how you can do it. So that's my email address, my website, and my LinkedIn, and all of my contact details can be found in all of those places. So I shall leave that up there for a minute for you. And yeah, and I invite any questions, any thoughts, anything that anybody would like to share. I'm more than happy to help you.
Thank you very much, Katie. I've just found you on LinkedIn, and I've just sent you a message, a LinkedIn request.
Super. Yes. Yeah. I'm perfectly happy. I mean, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so more than, you know, a lot of my free resources go out there as well. My articles, blogs, all of that kind of stuff.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah. Totally happy to connect with everybody. And I should also say, if anybody thinks, God, this is absolute tosh, what's this woman talking about? I'm more than happy to have those conversations as well. Because, you know, we are all on a learning journey. So I actually quite like some of the resistance sometimes, because it helps me be a better practitioner to understand, okay, but what are the challenges that you come up against, and how can we work with that? So please connect.
Thanks very much, Katie. Yeah, if no one has any other questions.
Thank you. Do you want me to just do a quick rundown of some of the events that the Chamber's got coming up, Zoe?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking we've got next Tuesday is our HR Coffee Club, where the HR and recruitment sector will be meeting at the Holiday Inn in Peterborough. So we get together every month, and it rotates between Peterborough, Cambridge and Huntingdon. So if anybody wants to come along and get some specific advice, I shall be there. Along with the other members of the committee as well. So if you've got legal questions, recruitment questions, anything like that, come along and have a chat with us. And I think is it the 6th of September, Jackie Kemp is doing a mental health webinar. And yeah. Jackie Kemp is the director of Your People Potential as well. So come along and see Jackie. I feel like I'm a good compare, am I, Zoe? Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to get you along to all the events. Thanks, everyone.
Well, thank you, everyone. And I'll hang on because we've got a few more minutes. If anybody wants to hang on behind and ask a question that they would rather not have asked in front of the group, I can hang on for a few minutes too.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
I think that's...
Yep. Is that all right then?